So you live in the Okanagan or you're thinking about making a move to Kelowna and the surrounding area? Well, you've come to the right channel. Welcome to Live Love Kelowna. So on November 21st, Bill 44 was introduced into the BC legislature, which proposed changes to the Strata Property Act regarding rental and age restriction bylaws, electronic meetings, and more. Today, I'm going to go over the changes that were proposed through the bill and what the implications are for Strata Corps as well as owners and also for buyers. Okay, so here are the main points with respect to rental restrictions. No rental restriction bylaws would be allowed in any strata corporations throughout British Columbia. Developer would no longer be required to issue rental disclosure statements. All right, the Strata Corp would not be able to screen tenants, establish screening criteria for the approval of tenants, or require the insertion of terms and tenancy agreements, or otherwise restrict the rental of a strata lot. Okay, so what does that all mean? Basically, there will no longer be any rental restrictions allowed for strata buildings here in BC. There are buildings here in Kelowna that restrict the number of units that can be used as rentals, and that all goes away with this amendment to the Act. Now, there was some concern that there would have been changes to how Airbnbs are allowed to operate in this province, but so far, there's been no changes to that. Airbnbs will still be allowed to operate just as they were before at the discretion of the Strata Corp. Now, in terms of the rental disclosure, right now, it is required to disclose how many rental units exist in the building or in the development that you're looking to purchase in. That also goes away. So why is it important as a buyer? Well, if you're buying into a development that you plan on living in, you may want to know how many units are owner occupied. This is why they left the provision in for Strata Corps to be required to track all of this information. So for example, a list of names of owners, tenants, as well as landlords needs to be kept and available upon request. Now, that being said, just because they aren't required to disclose it doesn't mean that they don't have to. You can ask for the disclosure, at which point they will have to give you that information. Now, the last point there I think is pretty self-explanatory. Strata Corps won't be able to screen tenants. The other big changes have to do with age restrictions, and they are as follows. Age restriction bylaws would be allowed for any ages 55 years of age or greater. No other age restriction bylaws will be allowed, and the age restriction would not apply to a caregiver who resides in the strata lot for the purpose of providing care. So as an example, you've got somebody that's 50 years old providing care to someone that's 55 years old. They cannot restrict the 50-year-old from living in the strata property. Right now, there are developments in Kelowna that have restrictions on age of 19 years or older. Strata Corps will no longer be allowed to put this restriction in place for any other building other than 55 plus. All of that said, this pertains to occupancy and not ownership. So if you're 29 years old and you want to buy a condo in a 55 plus building, you're more than welcome to do that. And you can go ahead and rent that unit out to someone that is at least 55 years of age or older. Now, the last rule changes are much less headline grabbing, but they are important all the same. So all Strata Corps would be able to hold AGMs, annual general meetings, by phone or other electronic means like video conferencing. There are issues with voting cards and secret ballots at electronic general meetings could be resolved by the electronic means must enable the chair of the meeting to identify whether a person attending by electronic means is an eligible voter. So that's very important, obviously. There would be no requirement to issue a voting card to an eligible voter attending an annual or special general meeting by electronic means. And an eligible voter attending an annual, general, or special meeting by electronic means would not be entitled or required to vote by a secret ballot. So, like I said, not sexy, but important. As of today, if you wanted to hold an AGM or a special meeting over Zoom or any other video conference type technology, it would have to be in the bylaws of the corporation, which could mean if you wanted to make that change, you would need a quorum of at least 75% and a vote to take place in an AGM. So if you're wanting to change those bylaws, it could take years in order for those changes to be enacted. All right, some big changes on the horizon. That's the Coles Notes version of Bill 44. I think the changes to the rentals restrictions and the age restrictions are pretty self-explanatory when it comes to the why. The BC government claims it wants to open up more units that would be available for housing. The estimation is that there are around 300,000 units in the province that have some sort of rental restriction upon them. Now, in another example of why the government does what it does, the lifting of these restrictions are only on buildings that were built 2010 or prior. Don't ask me why, I don't know. That would be a great question for the Premier of the province. So I guess the big question is, with 300,000 new units available for rent, will this be enough to push the price of rentals down and make it a little bit more affordable for renters? Or will this change in the legislation open the door to investors to increase their portfolios, further increasing the competition for these units and potentially driving not only prices up, but rental values up as well? Now, my feeling is if there were over double the amount of units available, so 600,000 units as opposed to 300,000 under current restrictions, the supply just might outpace the demand. Overall, I'm not 100% certain that this is going to have the desired effect that the BC Premier was looking for. All right, if you're looking to purchase a condo in the Kelowna and surrounding area, then we should talk. I have over 15 years of selling condos and have taken courses to increase my knowledge base that only benefits my clients. If you're interested in the conversation, then give me a call at 778-716-7527. As always, you can always email me at kelly@kellyscar.com. That's all I got for you now. We'll see you on the next video.